you're in the opposition.
Yes, but
you're in the Labour Party. You're a deputy speaker of the Knesset. Do you agree with the strategy that the current Israeli government has put forward in Gaza?
From the very beginning, we support the government. We believe that Netanyahu, Bogi, the defense minister, and the chief of staff, Gantz, are taking the right steps. They operate very carefully, proportionally, and I think they defend Israel through their decisions. And we, in the opposition, support them and hope very much that it will end according to the very I would say, measured and proportional decisions made by them.
Because, you know, some members of the current government, we heard Yuval Steinitz, the Minister of Intelligence, he's not ruling out the possibility that Israel might reoccupy Gaza. That's something the Labour Party in the Knesset would strongly oppose.
Absolutely oppose it. And by the way, I wish the Prime Minister will not join them. And as far it looks today, most of the criticism to the Prime Minister comes from his own party and his own coalition. The major support to the Prime Minister is from the opposition line.
What would you do differently if Labour were in power?
I think that we would be doing more or less the same. We have to defend this country. Well, you should understand it's unacceptable when you said 1 million people may have no power, but 8 million people are under fire in Israel. And I don't know if your viewers are fully understand what's going on here. This is the first time in our history that the entire country is under attack. And every few hours, there is another barrage of rockets landing all over the country. And in the area, near the border, most of the settlements were left without the settlers, without the population. And we have to position soldiers them just to defend them because we don't find yet any answer to those attack tunnels.
But Labour would take a different position than the current government on the peace process.
Exactly.
A two-state solution.
Absolutely.
You'd be much more willing to make those kinds of territorial concessions that the current government is not. And that's what, if you speak to Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian Authority leader, Saib Erekat, who we just interviewed, they want a two-state solution, Israel and Palestine.
Absolutely.
Are you convinced that the current government of Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is in favor of what is called that two-state solution?
We are calling the government that the day after this battle, or this military operation is over, we will turn the page and move towards the Palestinians, those who live in Judea and Samaria, and even in Gaza, and offer them a certain peace proposal or peace plan to build two-nation state for two people. This is the only solution that I can see accepted by both parties, we and the Palestinians, and the entire world.
Are you at all worried about the U.S.-Israeli relationship right now? Because the last couple of days, there's been some serious criticism of President Obama, Secretary of State John Kerry here in Israel. Some members of the Israeli cabinet, not necessarily on the record, but they're saying some pretty nasty things about the policy of the Obama administration.
Some irresponsible voices from Jerusalem. Some even senior officials tend to forget that the Iron Dome anti-missile defense system is paid by and financed by the United States. This is one of the miracles that happened to us through this crisis. Over 90% of the rockets were intercepted by Iron Dome, which was paid by the American taxpayer. So we have to remember that the United States was, is, and always will be our great friend in any economic, military, and political crisis. And I'm absolutely upset about those criticism and those voices that came out of Israel.
What would you do if the Labour Party, your party, were in power right now to achieve a ceasefire? How far would you be willing to go?
We would like to stop after we accomplish the original target set by the government,
what is
which
that?
means
the military
destruction the tunnels and causing as much as possible damage to all the military infrastructure of the Hamas. That should be the end. And if it doesn't help, we can always withdraw back to the border, which is not too far. You have been there yesterday, and wait. If they continue, we'll continue. If they stop, we'll stop. We don't have to make any deals with them right now, but they should understand that Israel is not going to tolerate any attack on it's not in home front any longer, Wolf. It's the entire country. Not everyone understands it.
Because some of those rockets and missiles, they were almost reaching Haifa from Gaza.
Haifa is over 100 kilometers from the border, and we always try to ask you the question we ask ourselves. What will you do? What will President Obama do if a rocket like that will be fired from Canada or from Mexico into America?
But you believe that Israel does have a partner for peace on the Palestinian side?
Yes, very much so. And I think that even within the government, that has been refusing so far to talk to the Abbas. Now Abbas looks as part of the solution, no longer part of the problem, but part of the future solution of the Israeli-Palestinian relationship.
Does the Labor Party, your party, have a chance of becoming the majority party in the Knesset anytime soon?
I hope so. I hope so. You know, history tells us that after wars, there is a political crisis and new elections, and maybe a new chance will be opened to us in the next election. But for the time being, bear in mind, we support the government, and it's not only about us, it's the entire Israeli public now is united in the same line to help the government, to help the IDF to accomplish the goals of this battle.